Call roll for us.
Mr. Mazzio,
Here.
Mr. Steve Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Kevin Meadows,
Here.
Mr. Hubert Allen,
Here.
Mr. Steve Rosen,
Here.
Mr. Harry Donahue,
Here.
Mr. William Fleming.
All right, and we get a motion to approve for the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt your agenda as presented.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Mazzio,
Yes.
Mr. Steve Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Kevin Meadows,
Yes.
Mr. Hubert Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Steve Rosen,
Yes.
Mr. Harry Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. William Fleming.
Okay, before we move on to the topic for tonight, I just want to remind everybody in attendance tonight that there'll be no public comments again this evening, just like the last meeting. Public comments will be allowed at the public hearing. And we are interested in those if you have. There has been a website set up, and that address, or the comment, the email is set up with comments@cumberlandcounty.virginia.gov. All questions or comments can be put there. Any questions will be forwarded to all the commissioners here and all the board of supervisor members. Then we look at answers to any questions you put there. We put on the website as well. There's also a QR code that you can scan to get the website concerning tonight's topic. And there are business cards with that same information that you can grab up there on the table. Thank you very much for attending.
Now, Mr. Chairman, if I can, that email address is actually greenbridgecomments@cumberlandcounty.virginia.gov.
Okay. Now, one other thing, please, the commissioners, let's let the applicant give their whole presentation. They're going to be two of them speaking tonight. The whole presentation, let's hold our questions until they're finished, so they don't end up jumping around and don't break up their presentation. Let's let them make their full presentation about any questions we have. They're going to also address all the questions that were submitted. So once they're finished with that, then we can ask any new questions that will come up. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us again. For the, I guess the format for tonight, I think might prove helpful, is I have Mike Wallace, the CRC, the engineering firm that has been heavily involved in the design of this permitting of this landfill. I thought it would be good for him to start to talk about the size of what actually is involved in permitting and constructing the landfill, and all the detailed analysis and redundancies and safety features that are involved. And then he'll do that part of the presentation. Then I'll come back and go through the slides. Some of them are probably a lot faster, because you've probably seen them, but there have been some tweaks to them. So I'll go over that, and then we conclude our presentation by discussing and answering the questions that you all are good enough to provide us. And then we can obviously open up for other questions. So this time, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Mike Wallace, with PRC, who's been from day one involved in the permitting and designing this landfill. So Mike? You're good.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As Will said, I'm here to talk to you in a little bit more detail about landfills in general and the permit for this specific landfill, so that we can give you some good quality information in your decision-making process. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today really apply to all landfills. These all these components are in the permitting and operating the landfill. There's a groundwater monitoring program, there's a landfill gas monitoring program, which also helps with odor management. There's leachate management. We do look at traffic impact analysis and work with VDOT to address potential traffic issues. And then there's the closure planning and the post-closure plan. So this takes it from initial siting, permitting, and construction, all the way through to the post-closure campaign. Additionally, in your case, I will explain the double liner system in more detail. As you're aware, with Virginia, only a single liner system is required, but the applicant has agreed to install a double liner in this case. And we can also talk some about the county oversight that will be provided as well. So this is a cross-section of a typical modern subtitle D landfill. And as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, these modern, highly engineered, highly regulated landfills are different than the old landfills, which essentially were a glorified hole in the ground where we buried our trash. Now we have a controlled substrate, which is basically the foundation of the landfill, will support the landfill and help protect the environment. Above that, we have the liner system and the leachate collection system, and then above that goes the waste. And then once the landfill is filled, part of the closure here is, part of the closure is a synthetic cap that goes on top of the waste to close it. So in the old days, we just put a clay cap on and the water would eventually infiltrate. Now when we close the landfill, we put a similar membrane on top as the what is below. So it becomes a fully wrapped plastic mound of our trash. This also shows the leachate collection system here down at the bottom of the landfill, where as precipitation works its way down through the waste, it's captured by a drainage layer at the bottom. It goes into a pipe, and then it's pumped to tanks on site. And then from there, it would be hauled off site for treatment and disposal. The other important thing is that we have our gas monitoring probes here to, again, evaluate the decomposition of the waste, which produces the gas. And these probes make sure it's not migrating off-site. And if we see that it is, then we have an opportunity to do something with it while it's still on the property. Additionally, we have our groundwater monitoring wells, which will be around the perimeter of the landfill and monitoring groundwater outside, again, to evaluate the quality of the groundwater as filling the landfill progresses. So let's talk about that groundwater monitoring network to start with here. So this is the current design that we're working on, the layout of the landfill here. And you can see each of these green dots around the landfill are the proposed monitoring. So these would be installed around the landfill to monitor groundwater quality associated with the landfill. Now, this is all being proposed in the Part B permit application, and DEQ will have the final approval, and they may have comments and want us to modify the network somewhat. But this is how the network is proposed now. It will go in with the Part B application that DEQ will work on. And we will be monitoring groundwater at this facility on a quarterly basis, so 4 times a year. that will continue through the life of the landfill and will continue for a minimum of 30 years after the landfill is closed. And that's what that post-closure care plan portion of that is how you can monitor groundwater after it's closed. So essentially, it's a continuation of that groundwater monitoring program for another 30 years. Okay, this is a graphic of the double liner system that I briefly explained earlier. And again, this is what differentiates these modern subtype D landfills from the older landfills. So here we have, down here at the bottom is your controlled subgrade. And again, that's earth that is brought in to be free of rock fragments or anything that threaten the integrity of the liner. It is a lower permeability substrate, but it's not necessarily impermeable, but it is compacted and density tested as we prepare that foundation. Then above that is this tan layer here, which is a geosynthetic clay liner. And that is a clay, unlike clay and fabric liner, that has a permeability of about 10 to the minus 9th to 10 to minus 11th centimeter per second. That may not mean anything to you, and that's okay. We used to use, instead of that layer, we used to use a foot of compacted clay that would get us to 10 to the minus 7th. So now we're 100 times less permeable than the old clay liners that we used to use. So above that geosynthetic clay is the flexible membrane liner, which is the plastic liner, the thick plastic liner. It's a high density polyethylene, HDPE, that is the primary liner for the landfill. Above that flexible membrane liner is another geosynthetic layer. This one is a drainage layer. So it is a filter material that also has some plastic netting around it to support it. And that will act as your drainage layer between the two liners. So if your waste is up here at the top, if this liner was to get breached, leachate would make it to that drainage layer. That drainage layer drains to a sump where we can access the leachate and test it. So that's the bottom liner. Then above that, we repeat the geosynthetic clay liner, the flexible membrane liner, and then another geocomposite filter layer. So those are the components of the double liner. And then above that, we would have a drainage layer of sand or gravel with a pipe in it, and that's the drainage layer that collects the leachate as moisture moves down through the waste. So it's intercepted in this leachate collection line before it gets to the liner, and from there it goes to a series of sumps and is pumped to the tank, and then would be hauled offsite for treatment and disposal. When you first put waste in a landfill, you don't want to put things like concrete blocks and pieces of cars and engine blocks right on that leachate collection liner. So what they do is they segregate a layer of softer waste, less angular waste, called the fluff layer. And so that would go in above the leachate collection drainage layer to kind of prepare the base of the landfill for waste to be installed. And once they've got that in place, then they're just dumping the waste as it comes. So there's a real method to how these liners are designed and installed, and then how the waste is placed initially also to protect the liner. The odor management obviously is a big concern with landfills, and you've heard that we have, that the applicant has decided not to accept, wastewater treatment plant sludge or processed wallboard. And those are two of the primary things that go into landfills that create really bad odor problems. So with those taken out of the waste stream, the odors will not be as bad as they are in typical landfills. I don't know of another landfill in the country that says it won't take sludge, so this would be a very unique situation, but it should be beneficial for the community. But even on top of that, we will have a landfill gas control and collection system, and that will help control odor also, because a lot of the odors are produced by the landfill gases. As those gases escape from the landfill, they can cause odor issues. So collecting that gas will go a long way to further reducing the odor. Initially, that gas will be collected and just flared off. As the waste degrades, as more waste is put in the landfill and more waste degrades, more gas is produced. Eventually, you get to that point where the gas has an economic benefit to it. And so within about probably 5 to 7 years of the initial placement of waste, there'd be enough gas production to set up a landfill gas energy system, which can generate revenue. That's what we had talked about in the financial model of this. So initially, it would just be flaring to help control odors. But then the next step would be landfill gas production. So this is another close-up of the leachate collection system. Again, the collection lines are down at the bottom of the landfill, above the waste. It captures, the pipes capture the leachate as the precipitation moves down through the waste based on gravity. Then we have a pumping system that will pump those up to tanks in the area around the landfill, be stored on site, and then trucked off site. And again, with the double liner system, we would have a separate sump or sumps that will take a leachate from that drainage layer between the two liners, so that we can monitor the quality of what was in the landfill. We have committed to county oversight to evaluate the waste that's delivered to the landfill to ensure that what's being deposited in the landfill is done so in accordance with state and federal regulations. In addition to this, there's oversight that occurs during construction of the landfill. There's an independent third party that evaluates the construction of the entire liner system and tests that liner system so that it can be documented that the liner system is installed according to the design specifications and do the job that it's being designed to do. So there, in addition to the county oversight during construction, there'll be third-party oversight for quality control during the construction. We, with the 1,500 tons a day, we're now looking at 75 waste hauling trucks per day coming down Pine Grove Road. We have done an initial traffic analysis, traffic impact analysis with VDOT to evaluate that level of traffic. And we are, at this point, proceeding with an initial design for some improvements on Pine Grove Road that VDOT will evaluate and either agree with or ask for something different. But there will be some upgrades to Pine Grove Road based on that evaluation with VDOT. And it may include paving some of the shoulders. It may include thicker pavement, a different type of pavement to be able to take the wear and tear of the trucks. But we'll be working with VDOT to determine the specifics. And as I said, when we get to post-closure, there is a minimum 30-year post-closure period where landfill gas, groundwater will continue to be monitored. This is what the cap will look like after the landfill is completed. As I said, we put a plastic liner over the top of it. There would be a clay layer first, then the plastic liner, then some topsoil, and then vegetative layer. And part of the post-closure care also is to mow the vegetation a couple times a year, but also look for low areas in the cap where precipitation can accumulate and have more potential to migrate down into the waste. Those would need to be repaired to promote positive drainage. Likewise, if we were to go through a drought period and there's some cracks in the soil, those would need to be repaired as well. But that's all part of that post-closure care plan that will be prepared as part of the Part B application. So that will be submitted when the entire application is submitted. So no operations planned to begin until DEQ knows what you're going to do through the post-closure care.
As I said, some of these slides I'll go through quickly. If there are any other questions, you can come back. We've gone over some of these slides before. One of the things that we pointed out and discussed is under the original CUP, it was going to be up to 650 acres of disposal waste area. And now under the CUP, there will be a maximum of 350. So we can slash you at least 300 acres. In addition, as I can talk about, it in effect is going to lower the height of the landfill as well. We talked about wide Green Ridge and in the location last time. I know there was a discussion, so we wanted to add this slide as to well, why Cumberland and how does it relate to the operations of GFL and County Waste. As we talked about before, this is where, if you see the signs, this is basically where the transfer stations are. This landfill is designed to serve Cumberland, Powhatan, Central and Southwest Virginia, all Virginia customers. That's why in our Part A, we put that we only serve Virginia customers, but that's where the customer base is being served at this landfill. And then, so as you can see from where these facilities are, why Cumberland is so attractive, it's in the center of the service range. So it's an ideal location off 60. We talked about the site plan. I won't even talk about that right now. And we've put in additional conditions that we discussed. I know we had, on this slide, we've added another column to talk about, okay, we have what the original design is, what the current design is, and how substantially diminished the size and scope of it is. And then we had the maximum future under the Part A. And right now, we have a Part A approval for suitability, and so we know what the maximum cap would be in terms of that area. But then the question came up was, what if we amended your Part A, part of the permit, and expanded the ability to have additional waste area? Again, you're capped under the conditional use permit to 250 acres. So this is, if we somehow amended the Part A and expanded it as far as we could under the CUP, what could it conceivably be? And so we've added this, this last column here. It would show that you'd be at about the 340 acres of disposable area. The maximum height would be 225 feet above the ground level. I think that's probably about 545 feet above sea level. Proceeding with conditional use permit for specificity, we will refer to a cap on the height related to sea level. But practical purposes and the importance of what it will look like, we wanted to make sure to equate that or translate it into what does it mean about ground level. And then we have the operations, even with the expansion of Part A, we do 3,500 tons a day. The impact to go as far as the maximum expansion of the amended Part A. You should have up to 2 acres of wetland impact. We have 0 under Part A that's currently approved. Wetlands is only 200 to 500 an acre. It could go no further than 2 acres, and then the stream impact would go to possibly 18,000 feet, and that's ephemeral and non-portable streams as well. So that's all thrown into this. And I wanted to give you the idea and answer the question. Okay, if you admitted to Part A, and you expanded as far as you could on the site, what would you do? And so that's what that kind of that's why we, in our cup, are very confident in the conditions that we're placing in the height limit. Because we know even under a situation where it goes beyond what we're permitted by DEP right now, we know that there are severe limitations given the conditions we put in the top. And one of the big ones is not being able to come down the road. That has a very, very substantial impact on the size and the height of the limit. All right, so we've gone through these plans. One of the things in talking with county representatives and the staff was to ask, okay, what is your phasing plan? Under the Part B, we're supposed to get DEP approval. Generally, how are you developing the landfill? Under what phases? Because you're not doing it all at one time. You might do a cell that's 10 or 15 acres, and at any given time, you want the open phase to probably be less than that. That's the more effective, efficient way to eliminate a lot of problems. But how are you generally going to be phasing the project on the property itself? So this is a draft preliminary plan. Submitted to staff to review, give an idea of where we would be, where we would be phasing, if you can see. So generally, we listed them, so you're coming down this way. Ultimately, once you got expanding, any expansion after the original 100 acres or so, would be coming up to this area. And then the final piece, if we amended our Part A successfully, and that's an extensive regulatory process. So we've submitted a phasing plan to look at. So the county, and you'll know generally what is the order of development on the properties. And then one of the other discussions that came up when we were talking with Stephanie and the representative of the county of where is the leach management facility going to be? That became a question. We don't want to do Pine Grove Road. I'm planning to put the west of Pine Grove Road. Where would that be? It's very close to the actual waste disposal area. So we submitted a preliminary draft to show, subject to DEQ. DEQ tells you where you're going to put everything. But subject to DEQ, this yellow area is the area where we're designated that you cannot have the major leachate management facilities located. So as you can see, the leachate management facility is going to be centrally located to the property itself. And we've talked about the new conditions. I don't think we need to go over those again, other than since we last spoke in talking with staff, we agreed to include an exclusionary or leachate facilities. And just to explain what leachate is, it is you get rainwater coming down essentially, and it's percolating through the landfill. The resulting fluid from that is called leachate, and then the phasing chemicals. And again, even though we're cutting probably 40% of the capacity of the landfill, and greatly reducing the maximum number of vehicles that can come on any given day in terms of tonnage. We are Green Ridge is standing by all its financial commitments to the host agreement. It's not asking for any reduction in any of those commitments that they're made to the town. And as we also mentioned before, one of the major things that we're adding, as you'll see in the top, is it came to our attention that there was a substantial environmental issue of how people were handling motor fluids and antifreeze in the county. And one of the things that we are doing is agreeing to accept those types of motor vehicle fluids and disposing of them in a safe manner off-site. I do also want to say, in addition to having a convenience center at the site itself, I want to emphasize the escalating cost of waste disposal, which, as we discussed last time, is only going to accelerate. But we are not only taking the county residents' waste, but we would be picking up the waste from your existing convenience centers. So they would go down there, take the county waste and bring it to the facility. So that's some additional savings that you all have. We talked about all that they've done today. And as we discussed, we've done the Part A permit, which was extensive. We've done conditional approval on that. We're now actively engaged in the Part B permit, which is the actual design of the landfill itself. We anticipate that permit, the application being filed in the next 30 days or so. And we've also put in for the employment application. So that's a conclusion of what we've talked about. As we mentioned before, you won't be able to see it from the time of school. But that's what we talked about. That's a summary of a lot of what we talked about last week. So what I'd like to do at this time is maybe have Mike come up with me. If you want to answer the questions that you all submitted, which were very helpful. And then we'd be glad to answer the additional follow-up questions. So the first question was, what is the status of a request to DEQ for an additional 350 acres of potential cell expansion? Would any additional expansion require a new cup? Well, what we're saying in the conditional use permit is it's not 104 acres and then an additional 350 acres.
Can you please speak into the mic? I can't hear you.
All right. Because I got it on my the total possible expansion would be a total of 350 acres of disposal land. So it's not an additional 350 acres of what we have. As we discussed, the 104 acres we'll derive that because that we can develop that around 104 acres without disturbing any wetlands or impacting any streams, so it doesn't require any federal permits. But in terms of, I can let Mike discuss of the 350 acres of disposable area, what is under the existing Part A that we can expand, assuming that federal permits to disturb any kind of jurisdictional wetlands. We have to get litigation credits, which we purchased, which I'll talk about in another question, which we've done. So I wanted to talk about what would require another application to expand, but it would not require us to come in on another conditional use permit. Under 2018, even though we were looking at 650 acres, only had to go through the permitting process. That case was designed not to have to come back again to the top. What we've done here is, okay, we are assuming nowhere any expansion would occur if we were able to get the permits. So what we're putting into the preliminary site plan is identifying where that potential expansion could be, so that we would not have to come in for an amendment to the conditional use permit itself. It may require, obviously, permits from you and the federal government, but this conditional use permit is to outline where you can generally have that expansion, assuming you have the state and federal permit.
And it might be helpful to refer to a map here. Okay, so the current Part A would allow us to fill this initial 104 acres in here without going back to DEQ for another permit. We could expand that area out to this purple line by taking these streams, but that, as Will said, would require a federal permit. But no additional permit from DEQ. The other expansion option would be up here in the Barrow area. We would not need additional permits from DEQ for that either, because that's included in this permit. And since no streams or wetlands would be impacted in that area, we would not need any federal permits. A potential future expansion is up in this area here. That would require both new DEQ permits as well as federal permits. So we would have to get another Part A permit for the site suitability. We'd have another Part B permit for the actual facility design for DEQ. And since there would be the potential to impact streams, we would also need a federal permit.
All right, the second question is, will the current transfer stations be kept and maintained by Greenwich, or will there be only one station for landfill for county residents? Or the hours for county residents to be limited based on landfill hours of operations proposed in regards to use of the convenience center proposal for landfill? What we're doing is providing an additional convenience center to Cumberland County. What the county does with its existing convenience centers is for the board of supervisors in the county. But we're an additional convenience center. What we are doing in connection to the existing convenience centers is agreeing to come and take the residential waste that is disposed of the existing convenience centers free of charge to the county and haul it off. We're actually going to get that waste and bring it off sites. That's part of the cost savings, substantial cost savings that we're providing to the county. We wouldn't be operating the additional convenience centers. We would be operating the one, of course, on this side. But those would still be county facilities, and we would be taking the waste that are disposed of those convenience centers. 3, how much of Pine Grove Road will be utilized by traffic to the site? What are the plans for improvements that you will be responsible for paying for said improvements? And we also have all copies of VDOT traffic analysis related. I know that there was a VDOT, there was a traffic impact analysis that was done on the original conditional use permit that the county has, but in following up with this presentation as it relates to accessing Pine Grove Road, there was a traffic impact analysis that has been provided to the county. And so the county has that. I think it showed that not only Route 60, but the amount of traffic that's coming compared to the capacity that Pine Grove Road can handle, it was determined to be a fraction, it might be well under 20%, even if you have 75 tractor trailers and convenience center use. But the county does have that traffic impact analysis. VDOT did agree with that traffic impact analysis. Any improvements in terms of adding asphalt or any other improvements to Pine Grove Road would be at the cost of Greenwich. It is not a county cost. So that we would be, any of those improvements, which are long-term beneficial to the local community, would be borne by Greenwich. I would also say, in looking at the conditional use permit, one of the things that we've indicated of the staff is we'd be willing to have a condition in the case that says the Greenwich is responsible, even though it's a public road, for any repair that's needed related to construction of the landfill, Pine Grove Road. And in addition, any repair needed as a result of the tractor trailers that are accessing Pine Grove. How many groundwater wells will be installed in their locations? Mike can talk about that. We talked about there's a system of groundwater wells, and we've been monitoring the site for years and years and years. We have a very good feel for where the groundwater is going, where it's flowing, the rate, and so forth. But as part of the Part B permit, I think there may be, I suppose, 15 all around the perimeter of the waste disposal, but that's subject to review and approval of DEQ. If they determine we need more given the size of this, there'll be more. Obviously, as you're expanding, that has an impact on the number of monitoring wells. But they're designed to capture everything around the perimeter of the waste disposal area. 5, they're submitting a cup for a smaller facility. The original cup want the ability to expand to what was or would be close to the original cup submitted in 2018. Is that what the plan is from the company? Absolutely not. What we've indicated is we're coming in with a much smaller landfill. They're having not only reducing the possible vehicles per day to 1,500 tons per day as long as we're accessing Pine Grove Road. But then lowering the total, even when we're off Route 60 and closing the Pine Road to our waste traffic to 3,500 tons a day. What we're also doing is putting in this cup is saying that originally we were going to relocate Pine Grove Road. That allowed us to expand by relocating Pine Grove Road, and kind of coming like that, to expand the allowed us to get up to, over 500 to 650 acres of waste disposal area. By our commitment, in case of saying we're not going to relocate Pine Grove Road, we've slashed the capacity, not only in terms of the area, but also the height of the landfill, which is airspace. And the airspace is the higher you can do a landfill, the more waste you can accept. Because of the nature of the topography on the site, by agreeing not to relocate Pine Grove Road, and we're probably reducing the capacity by about 40%. That's one reason why we can put a cap in the conditional use permit, greatly reducing the height of the landfill itself.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know, do you want us to answer questions or ask questions at the end, or do we want us to ask questions as he's going along? Because I got a bunch of questions. Okay.
There was a comment at the last meeting, I think, where we're going, the original proposal was 5,000 tons per day, and now we're looking at 1,500 tons, then moving to 3,500 tons, and that's only a 30% reduction. And that is an accurate statement, that is one way to look at it. I think, though, the real, a way to look at the total volume of potential waste disposal in the landfill. Initially, we were looking at 54 million cubic yards, and now with the potential maximum expansion out here, we would be at about 30 million cubic yards. So it becomes, the total volume of waste would be 45% less, 44% less than was originally planned. So two different ways of looking at it, whether you're looking at it on a daily volume or the total volume of waste.
That obviously has an impact on the number of years you're going to be open. So we think it's demonstrably smaller in scope, even with any expansion. And that's why we came in, we want to show people what the initial, if we don't get any other permits, what the size of this landfill would be. But we also want to be candid about, which have been other state and federal permits, what the maximum amount might be and where that would be located, which we've included in the case. Could the applicant explain how the purchase of credits works and further details that was mentioned? Essentially, if you're going to get the right under the core DEQ to impact what's known as a jurisdictional feature, water, and that could be wetlands, it could be a stream. You've got to, once you demonstrate the need to do that, you've got to justify why you need to do that. There's a certain, and there can be a ratio of how much you need to mitigate that impact to the wetland or the stream. And what DEQ has done is they allow you to purchase what's known as credits. Because what happens is that they really don't want you on site or next door restoring other streams directly. As we mentioned, a lot of agricultural uses are they degrade the streams. And so we've actually identified a property adjacent that we thought, and initially discussed with DEQ, we could acquire this and basically rehabilitate those streams. The government doesn't like that. They have concerns that will be maintained over time. And so what happens is there are large conservation areas that are actually developed and created, where wetlands and additional streams are created, if you will. And then what happens is whoever's managing that, they've created these additional jurisdictional features, then sell what's known as credits. And the government comes in and says, okay, this is how many credits that you have that you can sell through your facility. And so that's how you offset it. So that's how the government tries to maintain the environmental integrity. And so what Greenridge has done is they have actually gone out and they have acquired, and this was under the assumption we're going to be much larger than we are now. So they basically overbought the credits. But they have gone out and purchased the credits that would allow them, if they got permission to impact the wetland or stream, that they had bought the requisite credits to do that. And you still have to justify you need the permission to impact the stream of particular wetlands. But that's what the purchase of credits is. And so that was a step that we took in, at the beginning, or not at the beginning, but before we reduced the size of the landfill. Because we knew we would have to have those credits in order to have an impact on the new jurisdictional feature. Let's see, there's no reference I can find regarding the potentiality of gulls along or near the site. The applicant described what the potential is birds to be present and what impact they may have. There's going to be an operational manual, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, add after I get this answer. But there's an operational manual for the landfill that has to be approved by DEQ. One of the items is bird control, so there are any number of ways you can try to do it. If you need to sound, if you want to test to see what the sound is, the property line, and visual cues. There can be other things you can do to manage that. Now, what normally happens, and one of the reasons why having these buffers is so important, having a site this size, is you have any open face is probably going to be less than an acre. And so when the gulls, for example, become more of an issue for the developer of the landfill, the operator of the landfill, than it is to nearby residents, because the gulls want to be near the source of what they're looking at. But the operational, so we don't anticipate any impact to our neighbors as it relates to gulls. But that will be a component of our operational manual that has to be approved by DEQ. Excellent, I actually got it right. Let's see, what percent of the methane gas produced by the landfill is expected to escape? When there's not very much methane, in the first 5 or 6 years, you don't have very much methane. We're going to be further reduced to have methane because we've made a commitment not to have sludge and reprocessed water, because that's what kind of eats the waste. That's one reason why it's so attractive and profitable for landfill operators. And that accelerates the methane development. That's going to get retarded a little bit because we're not accepting that kind of material. So you flare that off, you're probably capturing at least 75% of methane gas by flaring it. But it is a very profitable, as Mike mentioned, capturing the methane is very profitable. And that's, it can be profitable. And that's one of the revenue streams that we're providing to the county. And we're making a commitment to the county that within a certain period of time, we're going to be having essentially a gas to energy facility. Obviously, that becomes a very valuable commodity. We're going to capture absolutely as much methane gas as you can to convert it to energy. So at that time, we anticipate that the capture will probably be in the order of about 95%, 90 to 95%. Let's see, in general, I'm concerned about possible means the neighbors have to any adverse effect on the landfill or assurance can have to be given to ensure that there's a problem. We should not be tied up in court or paperwork to the point that a neighbor adversely affected does not receive justice. Obviously, one of the detailed cup is part of the DEQ regulations, and DEQ is coming out on a regular basis to inspect the landfill. It's not like you just open up and you don't hear from DEQ. And one of the things with the cup, and one of the important things of having these detailed conditions in the conditional use permit is, if we're violating the conditions of the cup, the county has the ability and right to enforce it. And so, so that is a valuable asset for any local person who thinks they're having issues. If we're not doing what we're saying we're doing, you put your cup at risk. But the county has an effective mechanism of enforcement. That's why you're going to see a whole host of the list of detailed conditions. And in addition, I would note that we have, there will be a full-time employee of the county that Greenwich will be paying for, who is the liaison and who is on site, monitoring what is being done, and it's being done consistently with what the permits and the cup require. Questions on conditions. One, what is meant by the location and dimension of identified uses may differ from the master plan as may be required or permitted by DEQ, VDOT, or other governmental agencies. Those reasonably required for the efficient construction, management, operation of landfill. What we're doing with the preliminary site plan is, as I've indicated, unlike most uses that come by, that come before you, this is heavily regulated. DEQ is going to be dictating where things need to go. And depending on where they say a certain leachate facility needs to be or something along that line, they dictate some shift slightly on some orientation of other structures. So what we're trying to say is this is what we believe it's going to look like. We're going to substantially conform to it, which is typical language in a master plan or a concept plan. For zoning or conditional use permit in my experience. But it's reflecting that DEQ, and this is an additional protection for the county and the citizens, has the ultimate say of exactly how they want it done. And so that's what that condition is trying to reflect. Condition 2 in the following sentence referencing to any future expansions desired by the applicant, permit shall obtain county approval of the site plan for the facility prior to commencing operation at the facility. We're, in terms of the, what we're saying is prior to operating the facility, we have to get site plan approval. And then any, what the condition is going to say, any expansions will have to be approved through an amendment to the final site plan. So anything that we're doing in that regard is ultimately has to go before the county for approval. Condition 6, what is the definition of unreasonable or standard for unreasonable traffic congestion? Would include, for example, the truck on the edge of Pine Grove Road or 60 is waiting for repair. And that was an initial condition that the county wanted in the original condition use permit. I would call that a belt and suspenders. And as we did with the VDOT studies that show that the amount of traffic that's being associated with this landfill is, in terms of the actual capacity of roads, it is small. Where Route 60 and Pine Grove Road have substantially more capacity, so we do not see any type of traffic congestion that is conceivably going to be an issue. I mean, one of the things for that route, one of the issues that came up for Route 60 is that for some reason, your trucks would be lined up on the road and blocking the road because you just have trucks waiting to get in. I think that's probably what the county was thinking about. The Route 60 access, as I said, is a mile long, so that's not an issue. And given the restriction that we can't have any more than 75 trucks a day, and no more than 1,500 tons a day on Pine Grove Road, there won't be any backup. You'll be able to go directly into the site. But I'm assuming the county wanted that language in there as an additional protection of backing up on Route 60. So it's another item that if there's an issue, the county can come to us about that condition itself. But that's why we also submitted the traffic impact analysis. And that's also why we're putting on Pine Grove Road a cap, not only, and what we're going to do is not only put a cap on the amount of tonnage, it can come in at 1,500 tons a day, which is not an average, but an absolute cap. But we'll also be willing to have a condition in there that limits the number of tractor trailers. So that's the big issue that people have with tractor trailers. Putting in addition to the 1,500 tons a day as a cap, putting a cap on the number of tractor trailers that can come on the day. 7, can you explain more clearly what is meant by the following sentence? Provided, however, the buffer may be intersected by or contain roads, provided the total aggregate buffer excluding roads between residential property and landfill operations shall total at least 200 feet. That is designed to address is you want to have at least 200 feet of wooded buffer between us and another residence. So we don't know exactly where, like, the county may want to have a road a certain way, or VDOT or DEQ says we want to have this road in our property. A lot of this road will be on our property itself. And so that was designed to say, okay, it could be that road is not going to be on the very edge of our property. It's cutting through our property. And so what we want to make sure is that if we have at least 200 feet of vegetated buffer between wherever our waste disposal is and wherever anybody can see another residence, then that satisfies it. Because there was some question of, well, if you say a 200-foot buffer, what happens if the road is like in the middle of your property? You know, it's 75 feet in your property, but your waste disposal area is 400 feet away. So we're just trying to clarify, we're going to make sure we have at least 200 feet of wooded buffer, you know, regardless of where the tree is. So it's orienting condition to where the residence is. This seems condition 14 deals where we're disagreeing to pick up litter along the road. We're required to do that, and that's what we intend to do. And if something's belonging to somebody else's property and wants to pick it up, we can do that. But typically, what you're having is, and unlike other businesses, we're saying we're going to monitor, and we're going to have people coming out periodically to actually pick up the litter, and also we have a near and reasonable demand of Cumberland County. And I will also say these trucks are going to be covered. So it's not like it's an open truck that's going down the road. Condition 18, A is applicable state regulations mean only DEQ permitting enforcement or there are other state regulations that apply. There could be, most of it is DEQ, but I'll have Mike answer it, but you can conceivably have other agencies that have a say, and VDOT, There could be other agencies, state agencies, that could be involved. And so what we're simply saying by that is, if there's a state regulation or an agency that it has an applicable regulation, we're going to abide by. So this is designed to, if we haven't thought of it, if it hasn't been, we didn't want to have a situation where, well, it wasn't specified that you had to comply with this, so therefore you're off the hook somehow. We want to say, no, we're going to comply with all applicable regulations. Yeah, one of the big ones that he said, for example, is historic resources. That's another applicable state agency. So we're going to say, if it applies to our case, we're going to comply with the state regulation.
I could you repeat that, please?
We're going to comply with all the state regulations. Let's see, if you look around the inspection policy, after all incoming waste be verifiably acceptable in content and origin, if someone puts unacceptable waste. I mean, as we talked about before, and this is as you're dealing with any municipal waste facility, the waste is coming into the transfer station of Green Ridge. They're inspecting the waste there, and then when it comes, we go through the scale. I'll let Mike talk about the inspection program, the protocol generally.
The regulations require that at least 1% of the trucks coming into a landfill are inspected. That's what the regulations require. Other different landfills inspect different numbers of trucks, but I think the key that Will mentioned is when this waste is taken to a transfer station, it's dumped on the floor of the transfer station, pushed into piles and loaded into trucks. That's the easiest place for the operators of the transfer station to be able to evaluate that waste. The other place is when it pulls into the landfill and goes across the scales, there'll be radiological detectors there to make sure there's nothing radioactive going in. And those, if there was something radioactive in the truck, that would trigger. And then the final safeguard is the operator of the compactor in the landfill watching the trash that's being dumped in the landfill and who's compacted. So that's essentially how the procedures work.
In condition 24, how is this consistent with Cumberland County Code 74702C and 74:B, 5B? They're fully consistent. If you look at County Code 74702, that talks about the general standards and conditional use permit. And what that section says is that we generally time limits that the board of supervisors can eliminate or change, basically reflective of the law anyway. But what it is reflecting is when you have a simple conditional use permit, where it's a small site plan, small building, you want it to be done on a timely basis. That's one thing. But when you have a large economic development project, it can take, in this case, years and years of regulatory oversight and analysis, investigation. That obviously takes a lot longer. And so if you're going to have someone invest, $100 million, you can't be on a time clock and say, well, the regulatory process takes longer. I've lost my conditional use permit and the tens and tens of millions of dollars that I put in. So that is consistent. I think that's what the code section is designed to look at is what is reasonable on the individual basis and circumstance. And in this case, obviously, I don't think you come across something that has more detailed analysis, examination, and regulatory oversight than a landfill. That takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, and then to give you a feeling for what it involves, as I said, to date, we spent north of $20 million. And right now, we're trying to get through the part B as we're going through this. We're spending probably six figures a month usually. So I think it's very consistent with the spirit and intent of the condition. And then as it relates to the zoning permit, I can have Stephanie talk about that. That's not, that I think is essentially trying to make sure that as you bring in structures, that they're consistent with the, is the reason to talk about it. That's designed to show that your structures and so forth, as you move on the site, are consistent with the applicable zoning conditions that relate to it. And so I think what we're doing is fully consistent with that as well. 32, why is the income capped at 3%? Yeah, I think that's a host agreement. I think that goes before the board of supervisors. So I think that's more of a post and not a conditional use permit plan. I will say that in talking to the county, we're having a discussion of, because the initial host agreement talked between 1% and 3%. And talking about maybe we can just be on a fixed amount, which is what you normally do in a situation if you have any lease, if you have any condition that's requires increase annually. What about the entrance of Pine Grove Road, is condition 34? I mean, that's part of the site plan, DDOT and DEQ approval. So the access will come off Pine Grove Road, but we have to get the permits with DDOT, and that'll be part of our Part B, with DEQ with the exact entrance of plan. 37, condition 37, can the applicant identify any situation in the nation whereby a single weather system had a breach? We don't know of any case in which, under a subtitle D landfill, that a single composite liner failed. Where you have your problems is old landfills aren't lined, or you've expanded off an old landfill, and that has issues in and of itself as you're trying to integrate the new sections with the liner with the unlined sections. But we don't know of any new landfill that is under the modern regulations that have a single liner system in the thing. That's one reason why we believe DEP only requires a single liner system. As we talked about, it's an exhaustive analysis. It's important, but it's designed to be implementable. But there was a lot of discussion and dialogue about the need to have a double composite line, of having redundancy on redundancy. And what we've done ultimately is our commitment to the community and talking with the county is to say, okay, if that is so important, we will commit to a double composite line. And so we added that in the condition. I cannot overemphasize the significance and magnitude of that change. That is probably $80,000 an acre disposable area. So if you're looking at the 100 acres, that would be initial. That's an additional cost in today's dollars of $8 million. And if you were to go up to, obviously do the math, depending on how far you expand it, and it could go up to an additional $25 to $30 million. It's an extra safety feature at this landfill that isn't required, but we're committed to it in condition. 38, what is the maximum possible natural disaster waste approved by Cumberland County? We're leaving it up. If you had a hurricane out here in Cumberland got wiped out, I mean, from our standpoint, my answer is that's up to Cumberland County. We're not going to say we'll accept anything and everything. We've got to get approval. DEQ may say no, you can only accept X amount, but also we want Cumberland County to have a veto. So if they think it's a good idea for us to accept disaster waste, we'll accept it. But if they say no, we don't. And that's how we're trying to word the conditional use permit.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points there. One is obviously if there's a natural disaster, we need to take care of the debris. That's the first thing. But number two, the airspace in your landfill is valuable, and you don't want to use it up with natural disaster debris. like construction demolition debris, doesn't compact well in the landfill, takes up a lot of airspace. There's not an easy answer to that question, it's something that the county would work with DEQ to figure out. The other thing that a lot of, counties have done when there is a natural disaster is they've used the landfill area, which generally has a lot of open space in it, to store or stage the, storm debris, and then transport that to a C and D landfill rather than taking up MSW landfill space with, storm debris. So there is some flexibility there. I think the key thing is, though, you want to understand that your airspace is valuable. So while you do want to be a good citizen and take care of the debris, protect your assets.
But that, again, I want to emphasize, that's why it's in collaboration with Cumberland and what they think is the right thing to do. So it makes sense from a community standpoint. We want to have the ability, and if the community needs us, we need it, assuming that Cumberland County agrees with that. So that's a dialogue. But we do not want to have a situation where, even though it wouldn't make economic sense, as Mike discussed, just to take anything and everything, that we wanted to show that at the end of the day, whether to take it, this is going to be Cumberland County's call. If they say don't take it, they have a veto power. 39, if the Board of Supervisors terminates the CUP, how will the landfill be secured according to paragraph 36? I mean, as Mike discussed, there's a closure and post-closure plan that has to be approved, and there's also insurance bond that goes with that. So that if the CUP is revoked and we have to terminate the landfill, those conditions kick in. And so that plan will be on file with the county, but we will have to still comply with the closure and post-closure requirements that are imposed as part of the DEQ permit. On concerning letter dated 9/23 to Mr. Seaford, I think that's just referring to the conditional approval of the Part A approval and saying it's suitable for landfill. And the question is there. So I can have you discuss, but DEQ has said that the site is suitable for landfill. There was these certain conditions as we're going forward with Part B to be part of the Part B process. But it is suitable for landfill. But Mike, why don't you talk about this? If you have a major permit modification, that's the DEQ regulations. If you go beyond what's in our Part A approval, we may have to go back and say if we're going to substantially expand the landfill, we may have to go back to amend our Part A. But that would require DEQ approval. But what we're trying to do with the zoning is, under the initial use permit, to say, one of the first things DEQ wants to know is it generally permitted under your zoning, and then you need the detailed regulations to address that.
So yes, that November letter was the conditional Part A approval indicating that the site was suitable for a landfill under these conditions. So as long as you meet these conditions, they consider the site suitable. So now we're moving on to Part B, which is the actual design of the facility, and that will be submitted to DEQ and commented on by them as well. The technical inadequacies that were identified during the Part A review process were all addressed through response to DEQ's comments and accepting those responses. So those had to be addressed before they would issue that conditional approval. And then the JPA is a joint permit application, and that is the application for impacted streams or wetlands from the Corps of Engineers. That's the federal permit.
Yeah, we don't need, because we're not impacting any wetlands or streams at this point. Questions regarding the PowerPoint presentation, slide 1. Am I correct in understanding a significantly less intense is considered roughly 30% of tonnage. I think we've addressed that. That we're capping the amount of maximum daily traffic from 5,000 tons to 3,500 tons. But in addition, as a practical matter, we're reducing the actual capacity of the landfill even further than that. Slide entitled typical MSW landfill. I think we've addressed the state-of-the-art double composite line system as we really want Mike up here to discuss the details. You've been a real fundamental grasp of what that involves. Slide has Greenwich changed and previously proven possible communication presents slides with proposed expansion numbers as well. We added, that's why I added that extra column to give you the possible scope of that. And our going forward, understanding it, never ever happen. You have to go through extensive state and federal regulations in order for that to occur. Slide entitled being a good neighbor would be possible include future conservation measures where the county in general might benefit from landfill. Without the surrounding neighbors may be affected. And that's one of the issues that we're trying to really accomplish here, that we're not going to affect them. That's what all the specific and detailed conditions are designed to mitigate and address and eliminate. So that's why when you see the actual conditions, it's not very, very extensive. They're listed, and that's why we're having the substantial buffers. That's why we're not taking the sludge and the process a wallboard, and that's why we're capping what we can go on Pine Grove Road. We're not relocating Pine Grove Road, and so those are various issues that we'll address with those concerns.
I think we missed a couple of the monitoring questions. We're here on number 4. We did talk about the number of groundwater monitoring wells, 15, around phases 1 through 5. Those wells will be installed as the phases are constructed. They won't all be installed at once, but as we construct phase 1, we'll put the wells around phase 1, we'll move to phase 2, we'll put those wells in. The wells will be sampled quarterly. There will be some tests that are done on site. pH and temperature, conductivity, turbidity, those will be measured in the field. But all the chemical analysis, those samples will be collected and submitted to an independent laboratory. Let's see, and monitoring will be done by a private firm with trained personnel. We want to be sure that when the samples are collected, they're not cross-contaminated, contamination is not introduced. So we need trained personnel to do that. Landfill gas probes, right now we're looking at probably 21 landfill gas probes around the property line, around that initial phases 1 through 5. Those will also be monitored quarterly, but those are monitored in the field with a landfill gas meter that monitors methane, carbon monoxide, oxygen, several other gases. That will also be done by a private firm with trained workers. And as I said earlier, the groundwater monitoring network that we put up there and the landfill gas monitoring probes, that's our proposal to DEQ. They very well may modify that, so the final, I would expect to be less, it could be. Sorry for that.
And one of the other things I want to emphasize is because we've been monitoring groundwater for years now, we know, thanks to TRC, exactly where the water flows, and we know the underlying composition of soil and bedrock. So we have detailed information, that you have a base of information, that when you actually construct the landfill, you can measure the differences and compare. And one of the good things we have in here is that, as I mentioned last time, we know the water flow is essentially moving away from private wells. There's one well that is conceivably very polluters, unless it's the natural groundwater, as we talked about, the capturing of leachate, but it's generally not going towards anybody's wells. And that's one of the things that is good about this site. So I think we captured those questions, and I answered them. Then follow up with other questions in those.
Thank you very much. Steve, I'm sure you have a few questions.
Yes.
That's good, yeah.
So I've got some follow-up questions from what you said, and then I've got some additional questions from the last time that we met. I gathered some more. On condition number 2, on the questions, your answer was sufficient except for we have issues in our county today enforcing CUPs. So, how do you convince me that our county would be able to enforce this CUP?
I think there are a couple of ways to do it. One is you're gonna have a full-time employee that's gonna be on site. And we're paying for it, it's on there to monitor the operation of this. The second is if we're not complying, we're under the DEQ. And so any violations of what we're doing in that regard is subject to enforcement action by the state. Obviously, as you're operating this landfill, given the amount of money you're investing in, you don't want to do anything that's jeopardizing your conditional use permit. And so, unlike most uses, even from an agricultural standpoint, in the county, this one will have is, there'll be no other site, I will say, that has as much oversight and inspection and review as this project will.
Okay, under condition number 6, I don't think you quite answered, I mean, you kind of answered around it, but you didn't really answer it, and maybe this would be a question for the engineer, because he seems to answer things very precisely and correctly. Unreasonable traffic congestion, I still don't know what that means. Who defines what that is? Is unreasonable congestion if somebody has to wait for one truck to pull out? Or
Yeah,
is,
what we're doing is, I think the county wanted to have, and we're putting on the list of conditions. In addition, you want to have something in there that unreasonable traffic congestion. So we agreed to it because we don't anticipate having any traffic congestion. So, and I'll be glad to talk to the staff about that, but what we've done, that's one reason why we had traffic impact analysis done and submitted. And I would also note that we're reducing the hours of the operation and restricting the amount of tonnage and tractor trailers to go on Pine Grove Road.
so the reason I ask that is because when something like that is not clear, it's harmful to you and it's harmful to the residents. So, I mean, if a resident looks at this and says, oh, okay, good, so if there's unreasonable congestion, I can cancel a CUP. And then they come down to the county and they say, we need to cancel a CUP because there's unreasonable congestion. But what does that mean? Am I not speaking into the microphone? Okay, sorry.
I said with that.
Did you catch that?
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
I mean, all I can say is the county said, I want, in addition to all the other things you want to do, we want to have this catch-all in here that it won't be unreasonable. And if we don't grab an issue, initially we said we're okay with that. So, yeah, I will tell you, I didn't craft that. I came from the county. And so we agreed to it.
So I guess our county attorney would have to interpret
And I was
that.
thinking, I mean, if it's vague, I mean, it's very hard to say what exactly that is.
Exactly, which is why it should be in there. If you can't figure out what it means, how are you supposed to understand what it means?
It's a reasonableness standard. So if we're just backing up traffic for hours and hours and doing it, that would be unreasonable. And it's a standard of moving the court, would that be seen as unreasonable? And so that's the kind of condition that it's hard to have precisely what that is. But I can see why the county wanted to have that as a further assurance that we were mitigating the impact. And we decided that we were willing to accept that because they're going to be good neighbors. So.
Just a follow-up question. Approximately how long does it take for a truck to empty its load since
And I will tell you, Jerry Seaford was going to be here, but he's ill, so I was the manager of Greenwood.
Can you give me a ballpark figure? I mean, 10 minutes, an hour, 30 minutes?
30 minutes
Okay.
now.
Okay. So roughly they're looking at a little over one truck every 10 minutes. With 75 trucks a day maximum. So what do you consider to be unreasonable?
Well, that's a good question. What if one stalls alongside the road? I mean, that's the example I gave, is what happens if a tire blows out and they need to call somebody to maintain? Is that
I
going to
mean,
be?
to you, it is unreasonable? Is 5 trucks lined up in the street unreasonable?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I'm asking what your opinion is.
Well, I don't live on that road, so, to me, it wouldn't matter because I would be driving by it. But for the people that live there, 5 would probably be way too many.
If 5 trucks were lined up in the road, I'd be very concerned if I lived there. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be concerned with less than 5 would probably
Right.
lined up there, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to get around a big truck and you can't see on that road and it's stalled alongside the road because it needs a tire change, I mean,
But
I just,
if they're roughly looking at, on average, and I realize you could change based on the flow of the particular day and everything, 1 truck every 10 or 15 minutes, it's gonna take a little while for trucks to build up. And I would think that would less likely to happen.
And I will say, a couple of- obviously, it's like any vehicle that has, if it's the same, I mean, if that happens. I mean, I'm not anticipating that having here, but I mean, I don't see that as unreasonable unless you're constantly breaking down. But I will also say that you gotta understand the efficient operation of a landfill. You do not want your traffic backing up. That's not an efficient use of your resources. So you're trying to have, so you're avoiding that. As a practical matter, we're trying to put these limitations, the objective limitations on how much traffic can go in, for example. That's, if you look at any development zoning, there'll be a book of what is the expected traffic you're going to have from a project. And so you may see a zoning condition that's going to limit the square footage of the project or something along those lines. And that's how they kind of address traffic impacts in my experience. So what we're doing here is, one of the reasons why we're putting a limitation on the amount of tonnage is that affects your traffic to the landfill. And then we submitted detailed traffic impact analysis of showing, given the capacity of the road, what you look at is what is the capacity of the road, how do you impact it? And objectively, in looking at it, our impact is pretty minimal in terms of what the capacity of the landfill of the road system are. And that was part of what we had to prove and show to PQ. And so that's the importance of the traffic impact analysis. Given the size and reduction, what I'll also say is, obviously, in 2018 approval, it was 30%, 40%, but we're going to have less traffic coming in what we do.
so since we're talking about the VDOT analysis, can I ask a follow-up question about that? So on the VDOT analysis, when was that study conducted, when they determined that there was plenty of capacity on the roads?
The last one was done in November, in 2023.
2023, okay. So was that when everybody was back to work after COVID?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then on condition 19, you had indicated, or I think maybe the engineer had indicated that 1% of the trucks are inspected as standard, and I don't know if you guys are going to do more than that or not. And then, you indicated that so, there's all kinds of procedures, radioactive testing, the truck's inspected at the thing, the various, all the way down the line is inspected. So my question though still remains and was not answered is, there's no way of determining what somebody puts at home into the trash bag that then goes to the transfer station. So I know it's not your, I know you can't control that, but at the same time, you can't say that there's no chance of something getting in there if you can't inspect every piece of trash that goes in there.
I mean, what we say is you're taking all the detailed steps for municipal solid waste. And that's what we're doing from the transfer stations, the scales, the radioactive materials. And then one of the things to address that is putting in a double composite label. I mean, you don't want to accept waste that you're not supposed to accept. I mean, and so there's every incentive on multiple levels to try to make sure you're accepting only the waste you're supposed to accept.
And then on 32, you indicated that, you know, that it was a compromise between 1 and 3 and leveled out at 3%. But over a 30-year period, if the inflation's at 5% and it's only capped at 3%, that means that employee will get paid half as much in 30 years.
I was not positioned to talk about the host
Okay.
agreement.
That was one of my questions, by the way. I didn't see it answered. Are we going to be able to see the host agreement before we have to recommend this?
So the host agreement is currently in negotiations with the Board of Supervisors Council in July and Greenwich County.
Okay.
So eventually the Board of Supervisors will address that. But it won't come through the planning commission.
Right. So we won't see it. Board of Supervisors will.
Right, yes, sir.
Got it.
And the way it's working is from a land use perspective, the conditional use permit is designed to address, obviously, the land use aspect of it, the production aspect of welfare. The host agreement is essentially directed towards the guaranteed financial benefits to the county. It's the way I would kind of divide the two documents. Now, there can be additional things that the Board of Supervisors want in the host agreement that could have an overlap with the conditional use permit. But that's how I would kind of define the difference between the host agreement and the conditional use permit. The conditional use permit is designed to address the operation of the landfill itself.
Okay, then condition 37, your answer was, I don't know what a subtitle D landfill is. It sounded like you were being very specific for a reason.
No, the reason why that's nomenclature, thanks for the question, is it used to be that as Mike mentioned, that the rules used to be much looser about how to address and how to develop and how to construct a landfill. And they didn't have nearly the analysis, the investigation, the safeguards. So, for example, I believe Cumberland County has a couple of online landfills in the county itself. Subtitle D was when the modern approach to landfills occurred. And that's when they said, no, we need to have a lot more exacting regulations, analysis from suitability, impact, specific design. And that's when you say subtitle D, it's like a dividing line between the old way of doing things and the modern way of protection. And so that's what I'm referring to.
So when did subtitle D landfills come on scene?
Now, there have been, was it 1993? 1993. And now there have been amendments since then, so things are progressing. But if you want to see demarcation, if you're looking at problems with landfills, you're almost guaranteed that they're associated with some landfill that was built under older standards.
So we have landfills that are 20 years old that are not leaking.
Yes, we do.
And even though even beyond revisions to subtitle D, the design of landfills has progressed in the 30 years since subtitle D has been in place. I talked about initially, we just used a foot of compacted clay as one of the base layers of landfill that has 10 to the minus 7th permeability. Now we use the GCL, thin clay layer, it's got 100 times less permeability. So the design has improved over the years, even though sometimes need may not have changed in practice.
One of the things to also point out is if a landfill does have certain cells that are under the modern regulations, you see an issue a lot of times, but it's an older landfill. And that's, the irony is the best way to approach things is have a new landfill that is all under modern regulations. And what's currently happening, some of the difficulty doing that for various reasons, is you're seeing some landfills that, you know, part of it are unlined and then they're expanding under the new regulations. I'm not saying that one of those types of landfills would have an issue. It's almost always related to, they had some pretty subtitle D sections.
Okay, thank you. And then this is not, well, it is kind of specific. I had it down here under the letter, but it can be addressed in a couple of places. My math, I'm not the greatest math guy, but my math is not computing when we look at the amount of tonnage going in, the amount of allowable 3,500 tons per day, and the height of the place. So are we going further underground now?
No, I mean, that's why I'm saying the capacity has shrunk more than the 30. I mean, you've got the cap of the number of trucks on a day, but you also have the issue of your total capacity. And by virtue of not relocating Pine Grove Road, just given the nature of the topography, we're not going to be as high airspace for the waste. So that can impact the number of years ultimately, or even come in slightly under 3,500 tons a day to preserve the length. I mean, GFL is trying to serve this market. You want to serve it for as long as you reasonably can. But it's the capacity is being impacted by reducing the footprint of the landfill itself. So you have two issues, as Mike was talking about. Making sure you have a cap on the traffic, because that's important. And then you've got what the ultimate capacity of the landfill.
It says, putting the max of the number of trucks that come in every day, 75, you anticipate hitting your maximum tonnage every single day?
I don't think you're gonna, I think obviously at Pine Grove Road, you're gonna want to try to get as close to 1,500 as you can. You know, as a practical matter, you're gonna be a little less because you can't, we're not doing an average. Our commitment is, it's a hard cap. So obviously, you're gonna wanna make sure you're not exceeding the cap. But do I think realistically, they're gonna be trying to get close to that on the days they're open? Yes, I do. But that's also why we wanted, and that was part of their calculations is doing this kind of work. Yes, that level of cap.
Then you referenced a little bit about the procedures to try to avoid gulls gathering there and other carrying creatures and things of that nature. Do other landfills do the same thing you're proposing?
Yeah, they'll address in the operational manner if they have a bird issue, what they'll do if they need to. So that would be part of any landfill operational manual.
Because every landfill I've been by has tons of gulls.
And a lot of it is the location, but it's also how you address it. I'm not saying you're never going to have a gull, or you're not going to have gulls, but that's also part of what we're doing in terms of where you're locating your landfill, the buffers, and also shrinking the size of the open face of the landfill. And as I think I mentioned last time, every day you have to put daily cover down, so the waste cannot be exposed overnight. So that's why you want a fairly very small working face that you're using, because you've got to cover it by the end of the day.
Okay, since you mentioned cover, that's one of my new questions, if I can. You had mentioned somewhere in one of the information packets that I got and read that you're going to.
Steve?
I thought I could hear myself really loudly, but I guess not. Okay, sorry. That you're not going to allow fly ash in the landfill. And yet I think I remember reading somewhere that fly ash is going to be used to cover.
We left out the possibility that it could be beneficial use. Sometimes it's used in certain areas to build berms. What we've expressed to the county is that's not our intent. So we're perfectly good with a condition that prohibits it being used at all. Fly ash or any other byproduct of the burning of coal for electric purposes. So we're perfectly good with removing even the beneficial use on one property.
I don't want to monopolize all the time. Does anybody else have questions before I go on to my next ones?
Yeah, how many more do you have?
14?
So, everybody will get a chance.
Okay. So one of the things I didn't see addressed anywhere is the power lines that would be going to the facility and how that might impact neighbors.
I can let Riley part of the, one thing that came up one time before water, somebody, with a community meeting, are going to affect the amount of water in our wells just by taking too much. One thing I want to emphasize is the use of water is probably a handful of houses. It's equal to a handful of houses, so that's just not an issue. I'll let you address the question.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you for that right now. We are in the process of evaluating the electrical service, and that will be included in the Part B that's submitted to DEQ. So as soon as we have some concrete information on that, I'll be happy to share it with you.
Okay, thank you. The next one's somewhat related maybe, but it would also involve road widening. Would eminent domain be used at all for that?
That's not our plan. I mean, we're not in control of eminent domain. So we're just planning on using the right of way. We think of the turn lanes and the tapers, that's going to be part of the ultimate right of way. So whatever VDOT says we got to do, if we don't do it, we're not going to be able to behind it.
So that would be a VDOT decision, right?
Ultimately, VDOT's going to say these are the improvements you need to have. And so we've got to be able to somehow satisfy those improvements. We fully believe, obviously, we can meet those minimal conditions because the road capacity is more than sufficient to handle what we're doing.
All right, well, the next one's about the road. So Pine Grove Road, if I'm not mistaken, there is different building standards for the type of road. So Pine Grove Road is, I think, county country road, and so it's probably not built to the same standards as 60. And I know that you have promised to be involved in the upgrade of the road, but would that include a remaking of the road or just continual patching?
No, I think what may happen is we may need to add asphalt, we may need to add a shoulder. I mean, it's just say whatever VDOT is working through. We're obviously focusing on getting our Part B application. But as part of the process, there could be some safety improvements or thickness of the pavement, for example. I see that off the bat. That VDOT's going to say you need to do that, and you would do that as part of the development. And that's why we were also wanting to make it clear that in addition to those upgrades, we are more than willing to have a condition that we've got to repair any damage that we may do to the road in most public rights. So that's a condition that we probably county would be good with.
All right, I'm probably going to get the answer. That's a host agreement decision, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Who would be responsible for paying for any testing that the county supervisor of the facility would require?
I mean, as part of the DEQ, I mean, he's observing, part of the DEQ is there's testing, we're going to pay for it. Greenwich pays for the independent review of how it's constructed. So you've got that third party in. You also then have the periodic inspections and the liaison can have the discussions with the DEQ of his observations, and he has total access to the site to the extent there's any corrective action, that would be on Green Ridge.
Yeah, no, I didn't make myself clear, maybe. Like, if they need to do a test to determine water quality or something like that, independent of the ones you're doing, who would pay for that?
We're committing to what DEQ requires to do in terms of testing. I don't know that we're agreeing to anything outside of that, other than making sure that we have someone who's observing what we're doing and can report. So if we're not complying with our zoning conditions, or we're not complying with what DEQ requires, that gets reported.
Okay, and then in terms of the predator control, again, I read somewhere about sound.
If I can follow up, to the extent there's any corrective action that has been required, that would be Green Ridge's cost. If it turned out we weren't doing something we're supposed to be doing, and corrective action needed to be taken, that would be Green Ridge's cost. That's it.
Yeah, that really wasn't my question, but I don't know how to ask it any other way, so I don't know. So in terms of predator control and preventing some of those, is that going to the predator control still be consistent with the noise conditions you
It
gave?
has to be. Yeah.
Okay.
We've submitted in terms of the noise level, so we'd have to comply with the copy of whether we're doing.
All right, and then how tall is the anticipated leachate tanks?
We haven't sized those even yet. They will likely be 500,000 gallon, or 1,000,000 gallon tank. So, I don't recall the height of that right off the top of my head, but I can get that answer for you.
Okay, that'd be
I
good.
will also note where it's located, you see the leachate exclusion area, but that leachate tank is not going to be located near the road, so it's going to be internal to the site.
Okay, the rest were kind of answered tangentially, so.
Thank you, Steve. Any other questions from any other commissioners? Mr. Flip?
Yes, I have three questions. And I apologize for being late, and you may have already answered this, but last time you said that you would show where the pickup areas would be. When I think of Southwest Virginia, I think of Lee and Wise counties and all. What is your definition of Southwest?
Let's go back to this area. If you look on the site, we're showing you where the transfer stations are. And generally, a general, a general rule of thumb is that you are looking to try to have your pickups around transfer stations within 30 miles or so, and that's a general rule of thumb. So if you look at these areas, they do Appomattox, they do Botetourt, for example, would be, I would consider Southwest. But they locate their transfer stations in areas where they're picking up considerable waste from their routes. So as you can see, we've got sites that are to the east that are in much more populated areas. That's why probably 75–80% of the waste is going to be coming from east to west. One of the reasons why the last board, or the previous board, wanted to have it located on the eastern edge of Cumberland.
Another question is, what have you found as far as the water quality as it exists today?
In terms of the groundwater,
Yeah, we have been monitoring the groundwater levels to look at groundwater flow, and we've not conducted chemical analysis of would not expect there to be anything other than natural constituents present. But I imagine that before construction starts, we will test some of the groundwater, so we will know what the ground quality is before we disturb it.
I mean, Jerry, I know for a fact that that's what we're gonna do, because you wanna know what your base is, so if there's ever any kind of issue, you can say, no, this is the test, the competition, so before we do anything like that, that would be, there will be analysis, of that. Now, I will also say, one of the issues in just examining, we do think there's an importance, to our, commitment to pick up the motor oils and antifreeze. I mean, I think sometimes just from an observational standpoint, if you're looking at some of the fruits and stuff, some people may not be disposing of their fluids quite the way that they should. And so we think that's an important, if they don't know where to go, it's inconvenient, whatever. We think providing that service will make a difference.
And my last question, you said 75 trucks or 1,500 tons. That works out to be like 40 tons a truck. Are both of them hard caps, or do you?
They're all, when you say, they're all covered. Is that your question? I'm sorry, when you say hard caps.
Say every truck didn't have
Okay, I got you.
40 tons on it.
Oh, no, I mean, what we're saying is, I mean, most of them are coming in on tractor trailers, this is sort of GFL. So the reason why we were able to commit to the tonnage and the number of trucks is they're coming in on tractor trailers anywhere from 20 to 22 tons, I think, compared to waste. So you know your maximum number to hit 1,500 is going to be 75 tractor trailers.
The 1,500 tons per day is a hard limit that's in permit.
So if,
Since we know that's our cap, and we probably be a little under it, because that is, like you said, a hard cap, we can also calculate it and guarantee we won't go over the number of trucks, and that, count those. So that's an additional benefit is,
I mean, you'd have to have 40,000 pounds on every truck.
I think it's going to be, yeah, I think that's right, yes. I think it's about 40,000 pounds.
So if they have less than 40,000 pounds, would there be more trucks?
Now, what we're saying is, the way this is going to work is almost all the waste is going to come from tractor trailers that have a maximum, I think, of 22 tons. So theoretically, up to 40, 44 tons, but or pounds. But then the only other trucks you'd have would be the local running trucks, the smaller trucks that are picking up Cumberland, for example. That's why in terms of the caps, we know the kind of tractor trailers that are coming in. That's how we can limit the tractor trailers. They're going to be GFL tractor trailers.
So, if you're getting sand or gravel, they weigh it, Are y'all that good with the trash that, is every truck weighed?
Yeah, there are caps that can be on that truck, so I'll let Mike talk about that, but it's weighed.
Yeah, every truck is weighed, so if we were to get a bunch of construction demolition debris that weighed a lot more than the typical truckload, we would have to start turning trucks away if we hit 1,500 tons a day, because we cannot take them. But yes, every truck is weighed, so we would weigh them.
So you weigh them when they come in, and you would turn them away? Okay.
Yeah, it's a hard cap as far as tonnage.
And because this is designed, the reason why we could easily agree to not only the tonnage cap, the number of tractor trailers is, as I said, is this is designed for GFL to serve its Virginia customers. So these are going to be GFL tractor trailers that are coming in. We're not looking to take a lot of construction and demolition. If this has construction demolition debris, that would be an efficient use of what they're trying to do. As I think Jerry said, right now, even before they expanded their operations, GFL can take 3,200 tons a day just review their current serving.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if I could just clarify, Mr. Flippin, this idea of a hard cap. The 1,500 tons per day, that hard cap is under the current permit, so don't be any misunderstanding. If Greenridge was ever able to get an expansion of the permit, then what the planning commission is looking at on the CUP could allow a hard cap of 3,500 down the road.
But that's a good thing, but to clarify, I was talking about Pine Grove Road. So the Pine Grove Road, we're suggesting a hard cap in the conditional use permit of 1,500 tons a day, and no more than, and also a maximum of 75 tractor trailers on Pine Grove Road. If, Mr. Dees is right, if we then go to Route 60, say we got the wetlands permits, we could access from Route 60. What we're suggesting is that the CUP saying you can no longer accept waste on Pine Grove Road, and then since it would be an expansion of the landfill at that point, and also just the nature of the entrance road on coming directly off Route 60, then the cap would be increased to no more than 3,500 tons a day. Caps are different depending on whether we're just from Pine Grove Road or if we ultimately use Route 60. Does that make sense, Mr. Coleman?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, sorry, I did find one more, and it's more of a general just timeline idea, so I can kind of wrap my head around what we're looking at in terms of time frame. So you had indicated something about a 30-day Part B filing.
We're looking at the next 30 to 45 days. I mean, that's the instruction is to get our Part B actually filed. As we talked about before, we've been spending months and months and months and months in DEQ meeting, providing information, because we're trying to get it as complete as we possibly can when we file a Part B. So
Okay, so Part A is done. Part B, you should have should have submitted in about 30 days.
Mhm.
How long do you anticipate Part B being tied up with regulations in DEQ?
one of the reasons why we've been spending so much time working with DEQ on the application is we're trying to push, if at all possible, to get your Part B by the end of the year. There are no guarantees on that. And as we've learned, but what we're trying to do is get it in by the end of the year. We need to get this landfill up as soon as we can. Yes, we can. And that's why as we're going through this process, we're spending 6 figures a month to get all this done. So then you were looking at trying to get your Part B approved by the end of the year. You do that, and you've got a period of actually when you're constructing.
Okay, and that Part B approval would be for the expansion, or is that just for the initial
Initial
104 acres? Okay, so then in terms of the expansion of current Part A and then the amended Part A, what does that look like time frame wise?
Depends when you're gonna get your permits. I mean, obviously, we'd look to want to expand. But I can't tell you how long that would take or whether we even can.
Gentlemen. All right, I have two questions. You mentioned you'll be monitoring the gases and the odor.
Yeah.
If it's determined that the odor is above or stronger than it should be, what happens?
That's part of the manual. I'll let you.
Yeah, we will have, in the Part B, one of the components will be the landfill gas management plan. That will be, will, among other things, address odors. There are methods, either extracting additional gas to capture the odor or using some neutralizing agents that you kind of spray over the waste to neutralize those odors. And both approaches have worked. It just depends on what the characteristics of the odors are in a particular facility.
All right, and the monitoring of these gases and odors is done randomly?
It's done quarterly.
Quarterly, okay.
Yeah, we'll have 21 probes on 2 property lines. we'll monitor those quarterly. And, you know, if odor becomes an issue, we'll evaluate that and monitor more frequently.
Okay, now you, it's been mentioned several times that the employee that you're reimbursing the county for has ability to do inspections, I guess, whenever they deem necessary. Do they need to notify you prior to doing these inspections, or can they just do them randomly?
They're on site during hours of operation, so.
Right. But I mean, does someone need to give you written notice to say, you know, the next Tuesday I'm gonna do an inspection, or can they
No.
just do an inspection?
While we're open for operation, there are certain things he may want to see that we may need some notice on opinion on what he wants to look at, but he's on site.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you. And yes,
If I may, just general curiosities, and I'm not sure that they may be better directed to staff or to the presenters tonight. So I'd be happy to submit them to writing if more clarification is needed. But for the sake of efficiency, they may be quick answers. To begin with, going through the cost of accepting the waste, and because the door was open with the presentation here, from the current transfer stations that are in Cumberland, I was wondering if there was some place to explore where that would be applicable to be added to, as I wasn't able to locate it in any of the conditions presented tonight, of the cost of the current 3 transfer stations, which are in Cumberland, and the receiving of those at this proposed site.
That's a host, I mean.
Now, like I said, just more general curiosity, if not appropriate, or if directed to staff to explore whether planning commission should be looking into that, because that does seem like a very good benefit to the county, where there are other areas more concerning. Then also there was a mention in the presentation of a 10% revenue share of energy produced, and I was just wondering if there was a cap on that, or any maximum, or any other limiting factors, which may not be appropriate for the CUP, but as it was presented tonight, I was something of note for me. Then looking to maybe clarification on condition 39, which includes the language right to terminate. Where that's located at in the CUP is, I believe, condition 36 underlined, that being more focused to the closure or the post of the life cycle of the thing, just seeking additional clarification as to would that condition be applicable to the entire project, or would that be confined to the previous condition, which was number 36, or would that be more applicable to condition 24, which is the one that contains the language of shall not expire. Then one of the other questions, this one was the last one I jotted down. There's 12 sites presented, and some of them are hauling, some of them are different things, where the waste will be coming from to the site here in Cumberland, and I was just wondering if there was any clarification on or inspection standards, or where that material is received from, or anything like that, and if that makes sense.
I can address that one. I mean, what the plan is what you have is county waste, or GFL, is collecting from, they have several 100,000 customers. And so you'll have the trucks come out, collect from Cumberland, come out and collect the waste. It ultimately goes to a transfer station, where, as Mike says, it's done, it's inspected, it's put on the tractor trailer, and then ultimately taken to the landfill. So the transfer station is basically the route trucks are picking up and then taking it to the transfer station, and ultimately that waste is combined on the tractor trailer to come to the landfill itself. Did I not answer your question?
Yes, partially. Again, if it's not best directed, just equally so to benefit to know what type of standards or evaluations or inspections are taking place at those places as a additional means, or
More than that, because it's put out and inspected, and it's coming into into the transfer station.
Right, like it would be like, almost like a redundancy of inspection, that the trash is coming relatively, like as in the initial application there, clarifying the proposed use being for non-hazardous and then in parentheses sanitary landfill. So that would be nice to see the clarification or just for general citizen comments that I've received, that this waste is not only checked here, but also there are some redundancies that the waste is already coming from somewhere relatively, or more information there as to where that stuff's coming from. That kind of ties into another one, and again, maybe not a quick answer, but there's a condition that it's going to be in compliance with any sort of state, federal, or Virginia DEQ and different agencies inspecting the material, whether it be considered hazardous or not. Additional clarification on if that is throughout the lifespan of the project, and what potential remedy would there be for if there was in the future or during the life cycle of this project, if some material that had been previously accepted was then found to be or deemed hazardous, or if there was some material that was entered into this site that was found to have been hazardous, would that then be able to trigger any sort of back checks for the source of where that came from? And then just to see this last one. And then also it may be better directed to staff. And again, I'd be happy to write these out so they're a little more clear. And I would also encourage all the members of the audience and people that participated, thanks for their patience and everything, to take advantage of the resources provided by the county staff to maybe clarify some of these things that are not so clear. And that's it. Thank you.
You good? Yes, sir.
I have one more question. This might be something to compare with. We're all familiar with Luckstone at Powhatan and Walmart, and we pull up the stop sign and a couple dump trucks are coming out. Can you tell us how many trucks go and come in Luckstone, or maybe that's some in the future?
I'll see. I mean, it's considerable. I'll see if I can get that information for you. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the issues. We'll see. Is ironic. Some of the amount of truck traffic that's coming, going from Luckstone on 60 compared to what we're going to be doing. But I'll see if I can get that information.
It would be good to compare with. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just one last one. There's the conditions that are limiting the operations of receiving, and then going back to the original discussion about the reasonableness of the traffic and everything. I was wondering if there would be some further looking into, would it not be better to not limit the hours of operation to then have that time frame expanded, or if that would be going too far back into some other agreement? I mean, it would seem like if you have 75 trucks a day, which is one number for the minimum amount, or would that not be better expanded over the 24-hour course of the day? I don't know the limitations of the facility and receiving properties, but it would seem like maybe spreading it out over, not limited to general business hours when you have school traffic, commuter traffic, every other, the peak hours of the traffic time. And I know that may be a VDOT thing, but limiting that to then the hours of where the most traffic is already on the road doesn't seem the most efficient thing or the safest thing.
And that was one of the things we talked about before in the original cup of having 24 hours, where we were looking at 5,000 tons a day. And people were concerned about the 24 hours and wanted us to reduce the hours. So we made that commitment. We originally had a larger possible geographic footprint where the waste was coming from, and if that was the case. You have people coming in driving at night, but we're not doing that in this group. And given the limitation, the reduction on the landfill, if you're 1,500 tons a day, you're not going to operate 24 hours. I mean, you're not taking enough waste to do 24 hours. But the number of trucks that are coming, greatly diminished. I will say as a practical matter, the way we come up with the hours is you want to avoid your trucks being on the road, during rush hour. I mean, that's not an official way of doing it. So you want to we feel comfortable, we spaced it out enough that we can have the tractor trailers coming and picking up, not coming during rush hour. So I'll be glad to follow up on that. And given the size and scope of it, and especially on Pine Grove Road at 1,500 tons a day, you're not going to be able to operate it 24 hours a day. It's not big enough.
Is the landfill going to be open the same hours as the county is open?
I don't know, I mean, we put it in there, I'm not sure what the county convenience center is. It's gonna be open, the convenience center will essentially be open during the hours of operation of the landfill. Which we put
The
in.
county gets a lot of days off.
Yeah, well, no, it's gonna be open, and we're gonna be a great benefit, because it's gonna be open when when it's accepting waste. You know, we've set up the hours, and that'll be a host agreement where we're guaranteeing Monday through Saturday what those hours will be.
It comes out to about 56 hours. You say you're going to hire one person for the county.
Is your mic on?
The convenience center, the convenience center is, we'll be operating the convenience center on our property. That's not the liaison. The liaison is in addition to that, we can inspect how we're operating the landfill itself. So we'll have people operating and working on the convenience center side of things. That's not the county employee. County
Okay.
employee can have access to it.
Good. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking the time and being thorough as you were. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Before I ask for a motion, Ms. Johnson, if you could make a note in the minutes that Mr. Flippin did arrive at 7 o'clock. Thank you. All right, may I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn to 24th February or 16th.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Maxfield?
Yes.
Mr. Steve Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Kevin Meadows?
Yes.
Mr. Hubert Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Steve Rosen?
Yes.
Mr. Harry Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. William Flippin?
Yes.